Hello and welcome to the Partner Playbook, a podcast where we interview HubSpot partners about how to succeed in the HubSpot ecosystem. I'm Ryan Gunn, the founder of Attribution Academy.
And I'm Brian Garvey, co-founder of Profoundly.
Today, we're joined by Doug Davidoff. Doug is the founder and CEO of Lift Enablement, a diamond tier HubSpot partner, and he's the best-selling author of the Revenue Acceleration Framework. For over 20 years, David has advised companies on integrating sales and marketing strategies with frontline execution to drive dynamic growth.
Awesome. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm eager to dive right in, but just to start at the start, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? I think people are really interested to hear your background and where you came from, how you ended up in the HubSpot ecosystem.
Well, it all started January 1967. A kid here. In all seriousness. So yeah, our journey in the HubSpot ecosystem actually started completely by accident. It was so I probably became aware of HubSpot in 2009. We were actually a customer of HubSpot before we became a partner. I didn't even know that there was a thing called the Partner Program. The way that we became a partner was I had been an affiliate for Constant Contact. So if someone signed up using my link for Constant Contact, I think I got like $20 or something like that. And you paid $29.95 a month for Constant Contact. I was paying, $1,000 plus a month for HubSpot. And it's like one of the discoveries that we made when we were working with companies on the sales side was that if we were going to solve the problem, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the conversation, if we were going to solve the problems at the bottom of the funnel where the sale occurred, we were going to have to change what companies were doing or not doing at the top of the funnel when the lead was generated. So we realized we had to solve the lead generation problem if we were going to solve the sales problem. And so as we started talking about lead generation and how do you discover and find and initiate conversations, we had a client that said to us, well, we liked how you found us. Can you do for us? Can you make it so that people find us the way we found you? And I said to him, well, we can, but just so you know, we use this thing called HubSpot to do that. And they're like, sure, let's go for it. So as I was about to introduce them, I thought, well, maybe HubSpot has an affiliate program of some form. So again,
Yes.
This is back in 2011. So I called up to say, hey, do you guys have an affiliate program? I got passed around to like 4 different people who were like, what? And they said, oh, do you mean a partner program? And I was like, you can call it whatever you want to call it. I just want to know if I refer business to you, can I get $100 or something? I can take my wife out to dinner. And I discovered that there was this thing called a partner program. So
I bet they give you a little more than $100.
And yes, it definitely generated more than $100. No question about that. Signed up, went to my first inbound in 2013. That's when I met and actually really learned what the partner program was.
Yeah.
And said, oh, shit, I wish I had known this was a real thing before as part of the pivots. But that's how I got into the HubSpot ecosystem was we were using it for our inbound marketing and started talking to sales executives about it and just kind of naturally, it naturally followed a course, and we've changed a couple times since then. And today we're diamond near elite partners.
That's awesome. What a journey.
I feel like that discovery of inbound marketing and how the kind of HubSpot approach to lead generation was a real light bulb moment for a lot of companies. Max Cohen from Happily has this great story about how when he was in his MBA program, he had a professor who came in. It was his final year in the program. And the professor was like, guys, I just learned about inbound marketing from this company called HubSpot. And I want you to forget everything we've taught you so far. And in this final semester, I'm going to just dive deep on inbound stuff. And it feels like it was a paradigm shift. Did it change how you approached, what types of clients you were going after in terms of the size, the types of projects, that kind of thing?
The adoption of HubSpot hasn't changed as much as the underlying problem that we've solved. So the company started in 2004. So we're not a brand new company. We started under the name Imagine Sales Advisory. And we worked with company on strategic go-to-market. So what was their underlying strategy? what was their sale, what was the underlying sales process, their sales structure. I'm a big systems thinker, big systems guy. So still believe to this day that the greatest sales organization that ever existed was IBM in their heyday. And they built the greatest sales organization, not by hiring better salespeople, but by plugging salespeople into a better system. So always had that. So, we started off really focusing in on the sales problem and worked with companies. We were sales advisory, sales coaching, sales training. The difficulty there, you think it's hard to differentiate yourself on the HubSpot side. You should try to differentiate yourself on the sales training side, where everybody has a methodology for this or that.
Oh yeah.
And one of the challenges that we dealt with is I don't believe that there's one methodology that works. There's not one path or one playbook that works. As a matter of fact, one of the things I talk about in the book that I wrote is the critical importance of defining your game and playing your game, and your game needs to be different. Like, it's not enough to differentiate yourself. You actually have to do something different. You have to think about something different so that there's something to differentiate, if you will. So as we kind of followed that path, and the one thing that's been constant for us is sellers need to talk to buyers need to talk to sellers. And for a myriad of reasons, that doesn't happen naturally, and left to its own devices, it doesn't lead to outstanding outcomes for either party. So, the thing that's been at the center for what we've done for 20 years is, how do we make it so that it's easier for sellers to talk to buyers, and at the same time make it easier for buyers to talk to sellers? How do we talk a lot about alignment? I'm a big believer that you've got to align with your customer base. You've got to align with your market. As we've identified that, which led to the most recent adjustment that we made now going on 7 years ago, where we were the first company to actually start offering revenue operations services as an outsourced option. That's the area that's really lifted the size and has had the biggest change on the type of company that we work with.
That's really interesting. I have seen obviously a ton of that in the last couple of years with HubSpot partners, primarily that were marketing agencies, now adding RevOps services, because that is where the money is. That, the big, complex, high dollar projects are those big implementations and RevOps projects.
The thing that's interesting on that, and I always worry, because I remember when HubSpot rolled out Sales Hub and suddenly they had a sales solution, because we had come, we were kind of what Seth Gunn would call a purple cow in the HubSpot ecosystem for a while, because we didn't start as a marketing agency. So like all the web stuff and digital stuff, that was the stuff we were learning. I remember when I first met Mark Roberge, and I mentioned to him that we were a partner, and we had, I think at the time, about 6 or 7 clients, and he didn't know who I was at the time. He's like, well, who are you selling to? And I said, well, we focus on VP of sales. And he was like, and remember, this is back when there was only Marketing Hub. And let's just say Marketing Hub wasn't the robust platform that it is today. And he was like, really, how are you selling this to sales leaders? So we got brought into, the question was, how do you introduce sales to the marketing side? One of the things that I would talk about is, I'm not the right person to ask that question of, because I've never done that. I've never had a marketing conversation or a sales conversation. The thing that I've always had is a revenue conversation. If someone were to ask me, why should they work with my company? My company's now named Lift. We changed our name about 3 years ago. I would tell them, where multiple disciplines need to come together, which is why revenue operations is such a natural fit for us.
Yeah.
If what you want are marketing services, we do that. I think we do a pretty good job of that, right? Are we the best at that? No, we're not. It's like if you've got, you want to implement a blogging strategy, or you want to implement this strategy or that strategy, and that's what you're looking to maximize. It's one of the reasons we get along with other partners, I think, well, and we partner with other partners frequently, is that we're comfortable, or as comfortable as you can get, not only saying where are we really good and where are we the right people, but also where are we not right. And so the thing that I've learned, it's not follow your passion and the money will follow, but play your game and where is your level of expertise and what's the problem set that you solve different and better than everybody else, which means you not only have to define what's the problem set you solve, but who is that problem set for?
Yeah.
I always say that the most important question that any business can answer is, who do you want to be a hero to?
Yeah.
And then once you've got that answer, you obsess about it. You get maniacal about that person, that group. And then your job is to understand them better than they understand themselves. And that's how you begin to naturally separate yourself from your competition. I get worried that people hear about, the big contracts that are available in revenue operations, this tech implementation, like, oh, I got to jump there. I mean, every day I log into LinkedIn, I've got to go through my first 5 minutes of wondering, have I designed my life entirely wrong? Because everyone else seems to be, it's all about AI or this. 20 years ago, what we needed to specialize in was large language models. Let's put aside the fact they didn't exist in any commercial way 20 years. Like, it's really easy to get lost in what everyone else seems to be doing. And you find yourself jumping into the next thing only to jump into the next thing. And you'll never differentiate yourself or establish a real beachhead by doing that. So yes, I think the opportunity is there, but I think the opportunity across the entire customer journey is, so large. Like, the biggest challenge for us is narrowing down what is the focus going to be, rather than, is the focus big enough?
So Doug, I have so many questions on that. How do those opportunities present themselves to you? Like, how does that pain present to you? Because I think obviously you've got a lot of customers out there that think they have one problem only to discover, that it is actually a different problem. And I'm just trying to, you are, extraordinary at unifying these different functions. How do you do that? Like, how do you prospect for that kind of an opportunity, or how does it present itself to you?
So we've had a lot of success, or a reasonable amount of success, depending upon what your perspective is, because we're by no means the largest partner out there. We don't strive to be the largest partner out there. That's part of our game. But so we've had success identifying complementary players. So who are other people that address this series of problems that you address in a complementary fashion? And then what are the problems that they have? So we have certainly been a beneficiary of co-selling with HubSpot and establishing people that have worked with us, and HubSpot reps that have worked with us know us by a set of problems. When I meet a new rep, like, oh yeah, you're the guy that does so and so and such, right? So there's definitely, that's helped us. Referrals and other word of mouth from other providers in that space. Word of mouth from customers. So VPs of sales talking to other VPs of sales, CROs talking to other VPs of sales or CROs. So, sure, hey, we had that same problem. We worked with somebody. Here's who we worked with. One of the things that we do as well, it's a lesson I used to teach when we did more direct sales training, is never ask for referrals, only ask for introductions, right? Hey, I don't know if you can benefit from these guys or not, but here's who we worked with. We make ourselves very much available to say, hey, we're here to help you solve a problem, whether that means that you need to buy something today or not. There used to be this idea of move from a mentality of always be closing to always be helping. Mm-hmm. We continue to follow and flow in that. How can we make sure that the value that we generate is always greater than the revenue that we generate, is kind of a philosophy that we live by.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we do is we don't define ourselves by the problem so much as we define ourselves by the outcome. And then we lead people. So here's the challenge that you're having. There's a lot of teaching the problem, right? Our biggest issue is less about the awareness of us. And don't get me wrong, that's a big issue, but it's more, how do we teach them the problem?
Yeah.
And one of the things for us, given that we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars, we don't have big budget to do, branding and awareness campaigns, is if we can be the means that introduce the problem to you, you're much more likely to remember who we are than if we were to introduce us to you and then we tried to get into the problem. Yeah. So one of the things, like the mantra that I have there, is always be teaching to the oh shit moment, right? If we can cause somebody to go, shit, I hadn't thought about it that way. or,
Yeah.
oh shit, I haven't, we're doing it wrong, or, oh shit, that's why we're experiencing this problem.
Yeah.
The thing that customers have told me that we do really well is we put into words what they've been feeling for a long time. And again, we're, if you go back when we were, when we first became a HubSpot partner, our core customer there, one of the unique things that we did, one of the unique problems we solved was hiring your first full-time sales rep. Probably still to this day, the toughest hire to make in any business is the time they go to hire their first full-time dedicated sales rep.
Totally.
A whole unique set of problems. Today, our sweet spot customer, our who do we want to be a hero to, has 25 to 250 salespeople. So we're in a very different place today than we were then.
Yeah.
But it's still, our job is to understand their world better than they understand their world.
Got it. That's wild.
So I'm sensing a theme here of kind of finding your unique kind of authenticity that you can share with your customers and aligning that with their needs. When you were building out this business, were you thinking about specializing? Were you thinking about diving into this sales consulting or a specific vertical? Like, how were you approaching finding that uniqueness for yourself?
So we, the strategy, it's called niching. I didn't invent it. We, from the beginning, it's, what is our niche going to be? I think Apple is a niche player. They're a really, really big niche player, but Apple's really clear on who their niche is. And they're equally clear. And I think this is where people get lost when we talk about niching, is we're really comfortable talking about who we're right for, but we're really uncomfortable talking about who we're not right for and identifying that. And so when you look at a company like Apple, that I think is an inspiration to lots of companies that are trying to go there, one of the things that Apple has done really well is they've understood that my brother is not an Apple customer. And the last thing in the world they try to do is to be more appealing to my brother. As a matter of fact, I think they use my brother as a focus group to make sure that he thinks whatever they're doing is really stupid. And isn't worth it. And, Doug, why are you spending the money for that? And, it's like, I am an Apple customer. My brother is not an Apple customer. And if Apple were to ever do something to be more appealing to my brother, they would most likely be far less appealing to me. Right. And that's what I mean by Apple is, they're too big to call them a niche company, but they still very much niche. So for us, we niche. One of my early mantras that people quoted me for was a term that I, narrow the focus and expand the yield. Right. The more tightly you define your market, the more you can own your market. And that is, I know one of the questions that you asked me to prepare for today is, how do we differentiate ourselves in a universe of 7,000 plus people doing very similar things to what we do? And, we don't spend a lot of time talking about differentiation. Actually had an opportunity to meet a senior executive in marketing for Apple about 15, 20 years ago. And I got to ask him the question, like, how much time do they spend talking about differentiation strategies? And he looked at me with like disdain. And he basically said, we don't. We're just different. And it struck me that all that time we talk about differentiation, or we come out and we say, here's why we're different, that's just noise to our customer. The way we differentiate, we think about the problem differently. What is the problem that's being solved? So again, we see it as a revenue problem. We see it as whatever you're doing on the sales side is impacted by and impacting your marketing. And whatever you're doing on your marketing side is impacted by and impacting what you're doing on the sales side. And by the way, there are some customers who hear that and they're like, thank God someone finally understands what we've been dealing with. And there are other people who are like, I'm sorry, that's not how it works here.
Yeah.
Right. If we're looking for somebody that's going to advise us on messaging, right? We're looking for somebody that's going to advise us on closing strategies for our salespeople. And hey, if that's what you're looking for, there are lots of companies that do that, and they do that well. I mean, personally, I think that's the wrong way to do it. But you know what? There are certainly lots of companies that have gotten successful that are experiencing success doing it that way. And it's not for me to decide what is right or wrong for you. So the way we differentiate, the questions that we ask are different. One of the favorite things that we did a a large, 400 sales seat implementation of CRM. And we were 30 days into it. And, they were really happy with the progress. And the main contact at the company said, my biggest surprise is how little the CRM has to do with what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how much it was around the underlying business process and the things that we pride ourselves on that we feel like are the real problems that we're solving, that change the nature of the conversation, enable us to play our game and to win. Like the only game I've ever been able to win is the game that I defined. I've never been very good at winning somebody else's game.
Yeah. Well, on that, just sort of I have to ask you, as you're playing your own game, how do you do it? Right? Like we talked a little bit about LinkedIn and wading through a bunch of, noise on LinkedIn and questioning life decisions and all of those things. Like, how do you just like, for somebody that's out there that is sort of susceptible to, all that noise, like how do you tactically day to day do that? How do you play your own game? You just have a thick skin and try to ignore it?
I wish it was as easy as that. I mean,
Yeah.
I struggle with it every day, Brian.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell you, and I should advise everybody listening to this conversation, listen to what I have to say,
Yeah.
but please don't watch me too closely.
Mhm.
It's hard and I lose sleep.
Yeah.
The AI thing right now has me going, am I sitting here in a position where I'm solving yesterday's problem? What I go to, I keep people around me and I try to build a relationship with them that we're open and direct with each other. So, if I'm not wearing any clothes, I want someone to tell me that. But where I go to is, who do we want to be a hero to? Who's our customer? What's the problem that our customer has? What's our customer talking to? So when I'm at my lowest, or I should say when my confidence is at my lowest, because that's where it hits me, is those things hit me a lot with my confidence, especially as we've gotten bigger, our team has gotten bigger, which means more families depend on that. And that's the heaviest weight that I live with.
Yeah, that's real.
I make decisions that impact lots of different families.
Yeah.
They may or may not be aware of the decisions that I'm making. I'm not somebody that operates well when my confidence is not strong. And so I go back. So what I do when I'm at my lowest is I talk to customers.
Yep. I love that.
And I ask them, what problems are they having? What I used to do more frequently, I'd love to get back to, is I used to journal more frequently. And so I'd go back to look at what I was hearing and saying before and go, wait, has something changed materially?
Yep.
And things do change. And so we have to change. It's not as simple as just don't pay attention, because if we were doing that, we'd still be doing the same thing we were doing 20 years ago, and there'd be no need for it.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to that. That's why I think the question of who do you want to be a hero to, and what's the problem set, and what would they do with this, and where are they? The biggest weakness that I have right now, that I've identified right now, and I try to identify what those weaknesses are, what enables us to win this game, what would cause us to lose this game. And if you remember, I started off saying the thing that's been consistent for the company is buyers want to talk to sellers and sellers want to talk to buyers. For the first time in my life, there is a path that I can see. I think it's only going to impact a relatively small percentage of the sales that we influence. People aren't selling to people and people aren't buying from people. When our process is not built for bots selling to bots or bots buying from bots. And for the first time, there is a strain of procurement that is going to be bots selling to bots and bots buying from bots. And you know what? That's not our playing field. That's not, that's not, we're not the ones that are going to solve that problem for you. Now, when I take a look at the companies that I'm working with right now, and they're, as I said, our sweet spot, our average company right now has probably 150 salespeople. That's probably where we are on average. So, they're good, substantial companies. They're along from people buying from people not being core to what's driving their business. What are the things that are getting in their way? How do they utilize technology? Which again, the key word there is utilize. But I realize I'm kind of rambling right now. Back to your question. How do you do it? You try to stay focused on, you remind yourself you can only do so much.
Yeah.
If I start doing this, what am I going to stop doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And back to the customer.
What I hear, based on working together in the past, in my past life and so on, and what I know about you, like, I feel like, first of all, I love grounding it in the customer and working backwards. I think you're extraordinary at that. I think like what I seem to observe is you taking those opportunities, those moments to validate or reconfirm that you're headed down the right path, right? And you do a really good job of avoiding thrash, even though it may play out in your mind, in those sleepless nights. Like I think you're strategically questioning, like, am I still focused on the signal, not the noise? And I think that came out in the book. By the way, thank you for the book. I never had a chance to thank you for the book. Lots of dog ears here. So, but yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people are susceptible to the thrash.
One of the things you mentioned was surrounding yourself with the right people as a way to kind of keep yourself on that path. Is there a time that you've picked the wrong person?
Is there a time? How many times have I? Early in my career, especially. So I'm a natural skeptic, which I think helps me. I'm equally skeptical of my thoughts as I am of others, which I think has also helped. So I've always been, I've never felt like I alone can accomplish and conquer. And so early in my career, one of the biggest challenges I actually dealt with was owning my authority. The last thing that it still makes me uncomfortable today when someone introduces me as their boss. Right? I'm like, huh? What? I'm not anybody's boss. I don't want a boss. I don't want you to want a boss. Boss seems to me to be like, don't just do it because I said, right? So I've always been in pursuit of a partner or a number two. And early in my career, it led me to let go of things too early. Or to see the overconfidence of somebody else go, oh, well, they seem confident about that. I'll let them run with it. The other challenge too is I'm a natural meddler. So I'm either aloof to something or I want to be armed deep into it. So I meddle too much, and the meddling of it, I think I'm helping, but I've learned that I'm really getting in the way of somebody feeling like they have ownership of what they're doing. I mean, I've learned a lot of these things, and I've become a reasonable manager by making lots of mistakes. But yes, there was a time, and actually for a period of about 18 months, they were the quote unquote president of the company, where they were the wrong person. They were undercutting me in ways that I didn't know. They were second guessing and doing things. And when it finally came, I probably went through, like, the mistake that I made there was I made lots of mistakes there. The biggest mistake that I made there was I was aware of it and let it go too long because of the fear of, we were really busy. So if I was going to cut somebody that was in an important role, the burden that would put on other people, the fear of confronting and having that accountability and having that difficult conversation. I'll tell you, the day after they were gone, we got twice as much done in half the time. I learned, a friend of mine calls it addition by subtraction. When you've got the wrong person, right, the amount of attention and mind space that they take up is just completely disproportionate. In hindsight, and with the benefit of some therapy, also meant that as the business owner and as the entrepreneur, do I own my journey? Having somebody there, that was quote unquote responsible for, it was easy for me to, it wasn't about me, it was about them.
Yeah.
Which, again, I understand is really about me. So I've learned a lot of people, and Brian, you'll laugh at this because we've had some of these conversations. A lot of people think that I like conflict. And I really don't. I mean, I really like.
Yeah.
People would be surprised how often I go to avoid it.
Yeah.
The thing that I've learned is avoiding it never gets anybody where they want to go. So I've learned that the best way to get there is to go through it. So sometimes you got to take a big gulp. And I mean, I remember a couple conversations we had, Brian. I was like, okay, in the moments before the Zoom call starts, it's like, okay, this is what I need to communicate This is where we're coming from. And I think if you do that, my experience has been when you do that and you're open and honest, it's okay that if you're wrong. It's when you're trying to hide it, that's where things get into trouble. And hiding it is just another variation of lying, which means you have to remember what you're hiding. And if you don't hide anything, then you don't have to remember anything.
Yeah, the cognitive load is too great. And I've always appreciated the transparency. Like, I think that's how we really established our relationship, is there's no daylight between us. Like, let's just cards up, and be transparent, which is not always, easy. But I do have to say, like, when Doug Davidoff enters the chat, it's like shit gets real. Everybody's on their best behavior when Doug enters the room. So.
I think there is
I got that from my dad. My dad brought a no bullshit filter to me, and he was like, okay, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like all the words are great, but how does that impact what people are doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Direct communication. And I think there's an amount of healthy friction that needs to be there in order to keep everybody accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the great books that I read, or one of the great insights I got from a book that I read, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah.
That one of the key signs of a low trust environment is there's no conflict. And one of the signs of a high trust team is there's open conflict. And I thought about it, if you got 2 fans of a team that get together, when they sit down, what's the first thing they do? They start to complain about their team. But when somebody who's not a fan of the team says something bad about the team, well, we don't accept that. You're banished from the kingdom. But that openness and that conflict, either if everybody agrees, then somebody there isn't necessary.
Yeah.
And so it is that diversity that leads to the magic.
Yeah, it's true. On that, so how has that experience kind of changed how you think about hiring and like who you bring on and how you evaluate members of the team? Has it had an impact on your approach?
Yeah, once we get to a mid-level, I used to do this to every position, but I realized that there was a certain level of experience and maturity that's needed. There's a power balance. But one of the things that I do when I'm interviewing, like a lot of interview mistakes that I've seen, teamwork's super important here. How do you feel about teamwork? And I mean, so I remember we were hiring for this was in a different position, but we were hiring for a field salesperson. This was very much of someone who was going to be out in the field. They were going to be working on their own. This was not a teamwork position, et cetera. So I did an equivalent of teamwork's super important here. How do you feel about teamwork? It was a little bit more nuanced than that. And the right answer was, look, I appreciate a good team, right? Candidly, I work my best when I'm on my own. I like to come in for a drink every now and then, but put me out in the wilderness. And so one of the things that I look for when I'm hiring is where are they pushing back against whatever it is that I might be saying? Because one of the things I learned from advising on hiring salespeople is salespeople are never better than they are in their interview. So if they don't do discovery in the interview, they're not going to do discovery on their own in a sales conversation. Jump to conclusions, they're going to jump to conclusions. Like all those things are there. And it applies to other positions. So if I'm looking for somebody who's comfortable speaking the truth, who's willing to call that out, like one of my favorite things to ask is we go through their years of experience. So in 2014, you went to ABC Company. I'm curious, what led you to ABC Company? What surprised you when you were there? What did you learn that you didn't expect? I'll dig into those questions to see, are they paying attention to that? So are they modeling the behavior?
Yeah.
And so again, somebody who speaks, who says, hey, I'm not getting what I need. Like, we're a small team. If someone sits there and suffers quietly, that's going to lead to a crisis for 5 people. How do we make sure that we're not getting that? So I look for that in the interview process.
I think we could do an entire podcast just on how do you structure an interview and what questions do you ask. I think that would be incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
We are running a little short on time, so I do want to get to a final question, which is, if somebody's starting a HubSpot partner agency today, what's the advice you would give them?
I would tell them, don't start a HubSpot partner agency today. I would say start.
How did I know this is going to be the answer?
But that doesn't mean don't be a HubSpot partner agency.
Right.
It's solve a problem. I remember having this conversation with Brian Halligan. And I said, Brian, look, I get it. You don't wake up in the morning every day and go, what can we do today at HubSpot to make the world better for Doug Davidoff? We're on a journey together, and we're going on 15 years now, and I don't see it ending where our journey, there's parallel elements, though there's also elements that are frayed where we don't align. And there's the possibility that our journey might take us to a place where HubSpot is no longer the right solution for us, the right partner for us in this way. There might be a day that HubSpot goes along. Brian, as you know, the only thing I always asked was just tell me the truth so that I can make the best decision. I'll tell you the truth. You can make the best decision about us, and we can manage that going forward. So for me, again, it goes back to what's the problem that you're solving. And I think that this aspect of seeing, hey, implementing HubSpot, I'm going to implement HubSpot. That's going to be hard to differentiate, right? It's going to be hard to really stand out and to really have the impact that you want to have. So it goes back to defining your game. Who is your customer? What's a perspective that you bring that's different from what everyone else is saying?
Yeah.
How do you build and then build behind that? That's where your insight comes, and your insight will be right for some people. It will be wrong for others. You're looking for the kindred spirits that are where your insight is insightful. And then you work to broaden that. And I think that's how you build a successful business. That's how you build a successful agency. I can't help but say that I still find it funny that we call it a successful agency when in fact, basically agencies don't exist anymore. We're not agents of anything. So we're advisories. And I think if you looked at it through that lens, one of the problems with the agency model was your customer wasn't the person who hired you. Your customer was the media company. That's whose problem that you actually solve, right? When you call yourself an advisory, your customer becomes your customer. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at that partnership through the lens of, I'm an advisory organization, I'm a services organization, I think it leads to making better decisions. Who are the right customers for you? Who are the right partners for you? Who are the right employees for you?
I love that answer. And I think it's really good advice because I've seen partners who are optimizing their business for the partnership program and the benefits that are provided there rather than for their customers or for their own unique value prop. And they're the ones that you see on LinkedIn when the partner program changes, complaining about those changes because it has completely undermined their business model when something just slightly shifts underneath them. All right, Doug, thank you so much for sharing how to play your own game. Before we go, do you want to let people know where they can find you, where they can find out more about Lift Enablement, and shout out anything you guys are doing?
Check out liftenablement.com. We have an ongoing series of webinars. I don't remember what the next one is. I think we're in between. So we've got the next webinar getting scheduled soon. Plus, we publish content on a regular basis, podcast called The RevOps Show. And the best place to find me is on LinkedIn under Doug Davidoff.
Awesome. Brian, what's going on at Profoundly?
Well, first, Doug, thank you. I just want to echo Ryan's sentiment. Thank you so much for joining and for sharing your insights with us and with the listeners. This was awesome. Really appreciate your candor.
Thank you for having me.
At Profoundly, we are just continuing to crank. I think we've launched a few new features that makes it even easier for folks to connect with vetted HubSpot experts. So excited about that. Beyond that, I think we're just all eyes on inbound, getting ready for what's coming. So really excited about that. But what's going on at Attribution Academy? Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm repping the Attribution Academy shirt. I got a few of these that I'll be wearing at inbound. The other thing I've got going on is I'm publishing a guide to deduplication tools on HubSpot. It's a comparison of HubSpot's native tools with Qualify, Deduply, and InCycle. So 3 major players in the data cleanup game. And I've got a direct comparison that's going to be published through Hubsest, which is my newsletter.
Nice. That's awesome. I can't wait to check it out.
All right. That's going to wrap up this episode of the Partner Playbook. Thanks again to our guest, Doug Davidoff, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.